From here to the stars, I am your host, Stephen Euin Cobb. Our guest today is Allison M. McGraw, a graduate research assistant at the Lunar and Planetary Laboratory of the University of Arizona. She is currently working toward her doctorate in planetary science and geoscience. I have the pleasure of interviewing Allison M. McGraw, a graduate research assistant at the Lunar and Planetary Laboratory of the University of Arizona. She's currently working toward her doctorate in planetary science and geoscience. Welcome, Allison.
Hi, thank you, Steve. Thank you for inviting me in. I'm enjoying the fact that I get to meet with so many folk remotely and pushing forward to the new hybrid lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I understand you're involved with the 2021 Symposium of the Interstellar Research Group. You are organizing and running the art show. Tell us about your plans for the art show, if you would.
Yes, this year we're coordinating with the Interstellar Research Symposium, and this is to go along with our theme of space travel. So the title is The Art of Planetary Science 2021 Space Travel. This is the 8th year of the installation of the Art of Planetary Science, and this is a completely graduate student-led, organized, and all done, essentially, by the Lunar and Planetary Lab. We asked our department for some funds and put together a large gallery hybrid show that's also a public outreach event. Each year we have about 1,000 attendees that show up. We turn our entire atrium of the Lunar and Planetary Lab at the University of Arizona campus into an art gallery where we have about 100 artists and anywhere between 200 to 400 pieces of art displayed. It's all space-themed art under 2 large categories. That's really the foundation of the show, which is data art and fine art. We hope to inspire anyone who looks at space and thinks about it to create art in any media, any format, of any level. So we really do see it all. We see totem poles to temperature scarves to jewelry to music videos, you name it. We kind of get anything and everything, all space related, whether you're using actual data collected from something in space or on Earth. Let's face it, Earth is a planet too. We accept that in, again, any sort of format. And then fine art, if it's not necessarily from data, but still inspired by something from space, we encourage anyone to submit under this category. So I get the pleasure of leading this as a graduate student. This is going to be my 3rd year and final year as a lead, because as we have many volunteer positions as graduate students running the department events, we kind of have to pass the torch. And so I'm training other graduate students as I was trained in the past. My first involvement was as an undergraduate, which I can talk a little bit more later with the art show. But each year we run this show and look forward to the engagement between scientists, artists, and then the greater community, of course, with the new online hybrid lifestyle. Last year we did our show completely virtual, what I called a virtual odyssey, and we had the most amount of submissions from around the world. We had the most attendees in the sense of the most amount of people clicked on our website. We had almost 6,000 people actually view the art versus about the 1,000 that's physically here in Tucson that we see. And in addition to making the art, running the show, and passing the torch, of course, I do my research, which I'll also dive into a little bit later. But I enjoy making art from data myself, and that's what inspires me to be a part of the show. And then, of course, with the space travel theme, we're able to kind of connect broader with the symposium attendees who will be here in Tucson and inspire them to come view the art. We've also hoped that some of them will submit art, perhaps data art or visions that they see for space travel. But I've yet to see if we have any symposium attendees submit the art, so that'll be fun to watch. We still have about 1 month until August 15th, 2021 that we're accepting art submissions.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You mentioned data art. That's a new term I've never heard before. Is this modified data, or is it data, a painting from data, or what exactly does that mean?
Yes, that's a great question. It's almost exactly as you asked it. It can be the data itself that you might have put on a certain medium or maybe repainted. Of course, as public data that comes from NASA, us taxpayers fund the collection and the data acquisition from NASA. You might not realize that less than 1% of all your tax dollars go to the federal agency, NASA, and that's what actually allows it to be a huge public availability. So you could go on the nasa.gov website, you might see images of the moon or other planets. I've got some, of course, behind me here.
Mm-hmm.
You might take these images and cite them, of course, just as we would do with our writing, or when we use anything that's publicly available, we cite our sources. But what you're allowed to do is create whatever inspires you from these images or physical things in space, if you will, if you want to recreate it. If it's something that's really translated from the physical reality into your art. And then the fine art is kind of the catch-all. Well, maybe you look at the moon and you love the way it looks and you write some poetry. And so it's still space art, but it's not necessarily a physical part of the moon. And kind of broad between the two. We have a lot of artists that might say, you know, I painted Tycho crater on the moon. Is that data art? And I say, if you followed the scale size and how you see it, and the ratio of how the Tycho crater might be on the surface of the moon, realistically, I would call that data art. But we always encourage folk to email and ask us when they're submitting if they're confused, because there's some broad areas where you might think, well, I'm creating something physically, but is it truly data art? And then for my own submissions, I'll create some of these little asteroids. And I've never made a true physical asteroid in space, but I submit it as fine art. But if I was to create, say, the real asteroid Vesta, I would submit it as data art, since I use the real physical sizing and scaling of it. And it is kind of a new term, and I think it's trending. Hopefully we can set the trend here. I'm seeing more and more scientific art displays, especially with online kind of capabilities. We've had the University of Florida even spin off of our art show and create their own local space art show. So we think data art is trending.
Okay. My understanding is that all photos that are taken by NASA are under public domain, but other space agencies, maybe ESA or whatever, they're not necessarily under the public domain. Can you clear that up for us?
Yes, exactly. I think the structure here in the United States is that it's completely taxpayer funded, and perhaps with other space agencies, they have more private investment, and perhaps that's where that kind of changes the structure of it. If you go on the NASA website, they'll have the exact citing for you, and it's quite simple. It's usually NASA / whatever the mission is. Say it's we're in the Apollo celebration month here, when we've had the first men step on the moon 52 years ago yesterday. But if you have an Apollo image, you say maybe NASA / Apollo 12 / whoever took the photo. So it's not very long as far as citing it if you want to use it within creating art, or just even posting it on your own social media, etc. With the European Space Agency, ESA, I've seen similar type of sites. So you could go to the ESA website, you can download, for instance, one of my favorite ESA missions was to the comet Rosetta, or sorry, to the 67P, I believe is the name of the comet, but the mission is named Rosetta. And you can download the image of the comet and do the same thing. It'll say ESA, Rosetta, and then maybe the instrument that took the actual physical image, and then maybe the scientific person. Sometimes these images are already reduced for you, and they'll say the person that maybe modified the image or just even extracted it and made it into a readable format. So ESA, I'm a little more familiar. The other space agencies are kind of new and upcoming. We have the Chinese Space Agency. Unfortunately, the NASA employees and our structure here in the United States, you're actually not allowed to collaborate with the Chinese Space Agency. So I don't know a whole lot about them. The Japanese Space Agency, JAXA, I see similar type of sightings. So there must be some crossover. Maybe they're government funded as well, but maybe some private as well. But I'll speak to the private, since that's also kind of happening. We had, of course, Jeff Bezos in space yesterday as well. And although he might get harped on quite a bit, we have to remember that government-funded agencies are actually, in the grand scheme of science, kind of the newer. It kind of takes rich entrepreneurs to fund big science. We think of the Carnegies and the Palomar people of the world. I mean, there used to be a lot more billionaires that spent money on science, of course. That's a different ratio now for the amount of people on Earth that are billionaires that then also contribute to science. So even though he's getting harped on, we kind of need rich people going and spending money on space. In addition, and I don't know how that will look with citing. Do you cite Jeff Bezos when he starts taking your Amazon package in space? I don't know. That's a different ball game. There'll have to be a lot more like space law. But I will say space lawyers are a job that you can have. So I think we're going to need a lot more space lawyers soon. I feel that coming. Maybe there'll be some citing and other issues to think about, especially trash in space, but that's a whole other problem.
Okay. Talking about Jeff Bezos going into space the other day, I read, no, it was a YouTube video. Somebody put up that he had wasted a lot of money by throwing it into space as though it was not spent on jobs here on Earth, supporting families. And I hadn't heard that argument since the 60s. I mean, it was like, some people don't understand economics, apparently.
Yes, and I've worked public outreach, and it sounds like you have as well, running telescopes and showing the public the night sky. And maybe that's happened throughout time, where there's just a lack of understanding about what space exploration is and like kind of the push of humanity, and that it gets overprinted with a dollar sign. But yet again, NASA's less than 1% of every tax dollar. I mean, the U.S. military budget's 33%. And so if we were to try to break down numbers, if the government just decided to spend 3% on the people out of that 33%, that'd go a long way, right? We do a lot with less than 1% at NASA, and it gets harped on. And then you've got the rich guy Jeff Bezos doing this on the side, but it's still not even that much money in the grand scheme of what's spent. And it gets muddled out, unfortunately, of why are we spending so much money in space? Because it's such a bright, shiny thing, right? It's a rocket launching off. And so sometimes we forget that we're spending money on a lot of other things too. And I get, the empathy of, maybe we should fix Earth or whatnot. There's sort of that emotional side of things. But there's also like the push for human. I mean, the reason that we can connect so remotely and use our iPhones if we wanted to be on Zoom is because we put people into space without anything digital. I mean, right, the Apollo guys, it was all analog, all moving tiny parts and ones and zeros. And we got people to the moon, and that's what allowed tiny computers to show up then on Earth. And so sometimes it's so easy to overlook as you sit on your tiny computer and get mad at stuff, that kind of the push within space has kind of done a lot for us in the past 52 years. I mean, that was only 52 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. So kind of cool that he chose yesterday, I guess. Maybe that was a profound day to put another few humans in space. But anyway, not to go on too long about that, but we kind of need rich people going off into space. And yet again, my side of the art show is that we want people to be inspired by space no matter what it is, whether it's a little clay model that you like to make, or rockets, or you like the actual planets, or imagining distant things, or there's a lot of folk that just love the Apollo stuff, right? That's a whole other side of space exploration versus using telescopes to look at galaxies far away. I mean, there's really a spread there. So we try to stay neutral with a lot of the industry, because we kind of need people coming in, and maybe people are inspired by the more economic side of space rather than just the glory of looking at an astrophotography photo. And so that's what our art show kind of captures too. And so I'm okay with Jeff Bezos going into space. That's all right.
Okay. The art show, will some of it be for purchase? Will it be auctioned?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are a free public outreach event, and so we allow these artists to submit. We don't collect gallery fees, and that's also part of the University of Arizona structure, what I call the U of A law. We don't sell it for them, but what we allow our artists to do is to list it through the plaque that's hung up, the name of the artist, the name of the art piece, your typical kind of gallery piece setup. And what we do is we allow them to list a price right on the gallery plaque itself. Since we're also hybrid, and last year was completely virtually online, we do the same thing online. You go click on the art page. It will also, we give the artist the options to do prints. So for a graduate student budget as myself, you might see something like a $400 painting but then they'll do something like a $40 print, right? Order of magnitude smaller for the prints. And so you'll also see that the art can be listed for purchasing the physical piece and then whatever scanning, printing options that they've done. So both. There are some pieces that aren't listed for sale at all. Just kind of enjoy. Some people have one engineer who worked on some of the early Mars missions here. He got some of the first paintings that hung up in the Planetary Science building, and so sometimes he'll submit them. They're not for sale, but they're kind of historic for the University of Arizona. So you'll see a mixture. I would say over half of the artists list and sell. We'll also link on their plaques if they have a website, so you can go through whether it's an email contact or a website, and then you can purchase art. We work as a middleman, and that's also part of the university structure. Would be great to actually sell the art on site, but we're sort of not allowed to. Although if you pay the artist and you come to Tucson and pick it up, you can take it off site if you work with the artist. But that's communications, but strictly between who's selling it and who's buying it. But we'll work as a middleman for you.
Okay. Will there be an art contest?
Yes, it is a juried art show. We work really hard to get additional professors and local artists volunteering and helping us out. Usually we'll get a planetary science professor and an artist professor at the School of Art here at the University of Arizona. This is a very large art department. In College of Science, of course, we're housed in, but we really try to branch out to the other art and other departments, the music department as well, because U of A has really strong arts. So we'll try to get someone over there who's a professor, artists themselves, over here. And last year we also had a tree ring lab. I believe she's a professor as well. So we'll try to get a few folk on campus. We also had an artist that was just a local artist and not affiliated with the University of Arizona. These are the folk that look at all the art and kind of, we have a very, not too strong of a criteria, but some simple things that we're probably kind of looking for that the artists know a little bit more to look at and pick at. And then we have, let's see, I think nine winning selections. So there's 1, 2, 3 for data art, 1, 2, 3 for fine art. Since we're doing the space travel theme and working with the Interstellar Research Symposium, we're trying to get people inspired to do spacecraft, or whether it's humans going to planets or robots, whatever it is, really kind of hone in on the space travel. Those will be also in 1, 2, 3 category for the special theme. We have 2 special satellite projects this year. We'll have the kids art, and so I guess actually that will be another, yeah, we're up to 12 then. That's a lot more. We had a lot of winning art this year, but this is the first time that we've had a 18 and under focus for submitting art. We've always allowed all ages to submit. Last year we had 5-year-olds from Great Britain submit, which I thought was really cool. So this year is kind of a more collected view for the 18 and under. So there'll be a 1, 2, 3 for kids art. And then my special satellite project to hone in on that space travel theme and sci-fi is to create a young adults writing contest for what I call space shorts. And so writing science fiction shorts and submitting that. We'll have 1 winner for that. And at the very end of the show, after it's offered online, we'll kick things off September 24th, 2021. That's the weekend of the symposium. Everything kind of opens up. We leave everything online, and we allow the entire world to click on the art and vote for People's Choice. And so that's a final award. So quite a few kind of ways to win. We give a little plaque. I think I've got one somewhere. But this year we're hoping that we can print out maybe some 3D moons or something like that, since we're a Lunar and Planetary Lab. So
Okay.
Some sort of little consolation prize at the end of it. And then, yeah, it's all kind of juried through planetary professionals and artist professionals, and then I'll find someone specific at the writing center to jury our space shorts as well.
Okay, sounds very cool. A writing short is typically, I believe, under 1,000 words. Is that correct?
We're keeping it kind of broad. I don't want to try to, since it already is a very broad kind of show in the way in which we structure and try to capture all levels. I've spoken to a few schools and writing boot camps, and I say 10 pages, but whether they take that to 20 or 5, it's it's not, I haven't put a hard limit on it, I guess, let's say that. And I'm shooting for middle school, high school, and then college, university, the undergrads kind of range. So yeah, I've been saying 10 pages with double spaced is probably a reasonable kind of amount.
Pretty
But there is no
flexible.
hard limit. Yeah.
Okay. No upper or lower limit? There must
No,
be a
lower. I'm happy to get, and so the submissions I got have been thereabout. So
Mhm.
even without the ones that I've told that to. So and I'll be speaking with the Arizona State University Center for Imagination. They run a sci-fi TV dinner series, and so I'm hoping to also connect, even though there are quote unquote enemies, ASU, U of A, but they're a very strong Earth and planetary science operations and program as well. They work a lot with the lunar mission LROC, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, and camera. Sorry, I finished the acronym there. Painful acronyms. I'm sorry, I'm part astronomer here. I kind of consider myself my planetary geology astronomer. I'm a hybrid person. But anyway, trying to work with them and also get some folk up to, kids from Phoenix to submit. It's all around the world. I've only had Tucson submissions. But anyway, yeah, trying to connect and really get the word out. And I can also send anything anywhere if anyone contacts me. We've got the short writing prompt and that broad open structure as a reference for any students that want to kind of get their brain in the writing mode. We've got a little prompt for them.
Okay. You mentioned the art show will be physically at the university. Where is the symposium located? Different venue nearby?
There is. They are working. I just saw the map this morning, so it looks like it all will work out. There's a Marriott right where the edge of the University of Arizona ends. It's called the University Marriott. And so campus is a solid square mile. It's a very large campus. So anyone coming to the symposium, spend some time walking around. There is also a campus arboretum. So there's trees, and one special tree has actually been to the moon. So we have a,
When it was small, I imagine.
It's big now. It went as a sapling. And so there's about 60 what are called moon trees, and we've got a big plaque. It's right outside the Lunar and Planetary Lab. So if you come to Tucson, you have to see it because it's just really cool that this moon's been to the tree, or this tree's been to the moon as a young sapling. But essentially, the attendees can choose to walk between where we're going to have the art show at the Kuiper Space Sciences building. It's right on the corner of University and Cherry Boulevard. It's kind of a big iconic part of campus because there's what's called the mall, a large grass. I know it seems out of place, but here in Tucson, they love keeping the grass watered. We've got a large mall that goes right to the edge of campus and goes to the Marriott. So it's pretty much a straight shot going east and west down University Boulevard between the Kuiper Space Science building, where I am right now, the Lunar and Planetary Lab, going down to where campus ends, right to the Marriott. I believe they're working on shuttles, etc., but it's actually a quite nice walk. You walk by the moon tree, of course. You walk by the planetarium and kind of get a big sense of how big the campus really is. So I think that is probably something between a half and a 3/4 of a mile of the walk, but a pleasant walk with large trees and shade.
Okay.
But University Marriott, I think, is the colloquial term for that one. And there's also restaurants, a few shopping. I think there's a pastry shop also now that's pretty good. Good coffee on University. So there's resources along the way, which is pretty neat too.
Okay. This may be a little bit of a harder question. Art is generally aimed at sparking an emotional response in people. Why is emotion important to the goals of IRG?
I think the emotion is what really creates that conduit to the care. Whether it creates a little empathy or you just think something in space is really cool, that's kind of an emotional, I want to say, attachment to it. Speaking personally, I have way too many space emotional attachments. Every time I see a rocket launch, I cry, but that creates that care and that sense of, I want to curate this knowledge, I want to pass it forward. So I assume for this kind of interstellar, I mean, I'm kind of stuck on planets. I study asteroids myself, like pretty close to home in the grand scheme of things in space. But the interstellar component, I mean, that's, I don't want to say untangible, but it's we see the light coming from really distant, stars, and then there's a few galaxies. If you got good eyes, you can see Andromeda, right, in the winter time. That takes a lot of care or emotion to care about a little tiny pinpoint of light coming from really far. So I feel like we almost really need that. This empathy for this faraway star that probably has some planets around it, and who knows if it's like or unlike Earth, but at the very least, there's a sense of that care. One statistic I think about is that most stars in the night sky have planets. It's weird if a star doesn't have planets around it, and so just by these sheer odds, right, I'm like, well, there's got to be some other kind of planet that maybe is like Earth or unlike, like I said, and maybe it has oceans, and maybe it has microbes, and maybe you're not, but I still kind of have an empathy for something interstellar, even though that's so far away from me. So you really have to care about that, and sometimes you might not even get that sense. I mean, we don't have depth perception when we look up into the night sky, right? There's only two objects that you can see with depth perception: the moon, because of the cast of the shadows off the crater walls and the mountains that are on the moon, and Saturn, right? You see the equatorial tilt of Saturn, and you get that shadow cast from the rings onto Saturn, especially at the equinox, or at the seasons, not at the equinox, when you can see it up hemisphere or northern hemisphere kind of tilted up and down. So still even limited when you get to see depth. So I think you really have to have a lot of care, and yet again, that's why we need people to imagine space. I mean, these things are really far, and whether there's like planets like Earth around other systems or not, we kind of need someone to help imagine, and that's what I really like about all the exoplanet art too, is like we kind of need someone to be thinking interstellar, especially for the textbooks. We're discovering planets around stars every day with large surveys, and even telescopes here around Tucson observe planets around other stars on a nightly basis, but what do they look like, right? We only get one pixel. You think of like when you zoom in to something, a photo really close, and all you see is the pixel boxes, right? A lot of the time when we observe planets, the planet's so small and so far away that it fills in maybe a fraction of one pixel on a camera. So we're really limited in what we can imagine. So we need someone to care. We need someone to maybe look at that distant light and think about it and visualize it and, create art for us. And then the other part is we can explore the solar system quite a bit, but what's the next step? I mean, the next planet over, or the next star over, is Alpha Centauri, 4 light years away. Do we send a little, even if it's a tiny little laser pulsed, pushed light sail that's really efficient, and we just kind of keep pinging it here from Earth, and it gets there in however many years, because we only move at a fraction of the speed of light. But that's kind of the next level, and we kind of need engineers and people to care about that, to even advocate, to convince Congress that it's important, that to do this type of exploration, to keep funding astronomy and planetary science, which, by the way, within NASA, those are two separate things. There's astronomy, which deal with large telescopes and kind of the more interstellar things beyond our solar system. And there's a planetary science sector where folk like me fit in, where we study the things that are actually in our planet, or in our solar system, including our planet. And those are two separate things. Interstellar, again, is this really far away, and I almost feel like it needs an extra care, because I get to look at my asteroids through a telescope here on Earth, but some things in space require, like Hubble level, a telescope in orbit around Earth to see beyond the atmosphere, just to get that much more light, that much more data, because again, sometimes we only get a fraction of a pixel. So I think that was probably a long way to say I just need people to care about really, really tiny pixels of light, because that's kind of that interstellar level. So it takes someone maybe looking through a telescope, or even just in your backyard, looking up and thinking, oh, that's really cool, and I wish I knew more about it. And that's kind of how I started college. I knew I loved science as a kid. I always loved going to science centers. Sometimes there's only funding for one field trip a year, right? That one field trip to a science center. You're so excited. I remember thinking I loved that. And going to college later on, I was looking up at the night sky. That's how it came about. I'm like, I know I love science, and I knew I loved rocks, and was enamored by space. And I thought, I wish I knew more. And it was like a meteorite hit me on the head. It's like, you can go to school to learn more. That's the science you could do. And it was like, oh my gosh. But I don't know if I would have had that at looking up at the night sky where you see mostly stars. I mean, there's a few asteroids you can see with the eye on very limited times. Now I study asteroids, it's rocks in space. But when I first looked at the night sky, it was kind of an interstellar care. You know, I was like, I wish I knew more. I mean, how far away are those stars really? I mean, they're all at different distances. But again, your depth perception doesn't help you out there. So you kind of have to care to learn. You know, it's big calculations and big distances, but you know, we need people to care about calculating the distance to the next star. Definitely.
Okay. If someone wants to learn more, and not just to view, but also maybe to enter the art contest, where do they go online?
Yes, great question. So we have the University of Arizona website that's for the Lunar and Planetary Lab. And I can send over a link so it can be posted anywhere. But it is lpl.arizona.edu/TAPS I think a -2021. So if you type in the Art of Planetary Science 2021, we're actually a relevant Google search. And all submissions are online. So you'll go to this art show page. Again, it's embedded within kind of our university structure and Lunar Planetary Lab. But no matter what, Art of Planetary Science 2021, Google search does pretty good. That'll click on the 2021 page and it'll show you exactly the dates, the breakdown, and then you'll go to what we call a launch page, and it'll have a big green button right there. There's 4 different categories to submit for, and it's all handled online through this interface. So you can do the data art, like I said, our main kind of foundation, what we founded the show on, getting scientists to create art jargon-free. I've already said a lot of jargon for you guys today. Things said with pictures rather than jargon kind of fits in, something physical in space that you're inspired by. Data art. Fine art is kind of the catch-all. You can go click through. These are separate submissions, so you'll see them. And there'll be an explanation for each category, so you don't have to remember everything I said, of course. But you can click on the data art, fine art, of course the kids art, 18 and under for the first time, and the space shorts, the writing contest that I'm running. So you'll see short explanations. The prompt for the writing is also within that submission, so you can go and read about it, accept some terms, make sure you're not, plagiarizing. It'll explain all those kind of hard-lined rules, if you will. It'll tell you about the resolution and the size to submit. If you are interested in submitting to have the art physically displayed, we're doing a little bit of a hybrid this year. As I mentioned, we did the virtual Odyssey in 2020. Everything's offered online. You can view the art online from anywhere in the world. And then the classic way in which we ran the show, which was to deck out our atrium, as I mentioned, putting these 200 pieces of art all through the Lunar and Planetary Lab itself. That is going to be the opening weekend, but essentially it'll ask you if you're interested in doing one or the other. So you'll have the option whether you want to do virtual, both, or in person, and then the physical dimensions of your art. So you'll just enter in some basic kind of components about it, give us an idea of what it is. Like I said, we've had totem poles show up. So if we got an 8-foot totem pole showing up, it's nice to know. Artists are responsible for mailing their own art and also providing a return label. So if you're not in Tucson and you want to submit still physically, you can mail your art to the Lunar and Planetary Lab, give us instructions on how it sets up, send us a photo, of course, that'll be part of the submission. So it's kind of a hybridized lifestyle, obviously, nowadays, but we're trying to be accommodating for both sides of it. And then the hope with the Interstellar research attendees that they'll be able to come and look at the physical art that is here. And then, of course, everything will be viewable online if you can't participate. I believe IRG is also having an online virtual component. So even if you can't attend the symposium in Tucson, you could do the symposium online so far as what I've seen, and you could view our art online. So if you're more comfortable at home, yeah, we've got it both. But everything, no matter what, starts online with your submission.
Okay. If people are curious about the symposium, not specifically the art show, but if they want to learn more about the symposium, they can go to irg.space for the IRG's website, And on the left, there's a menu, and one of the items is Symposium 2021. They can click on and find.
Yes, I think we follow each other on social media's accounts, I think, between the Twitter, the Facebook, and the Instagram for both the IRG and the Art of Planetary Science. So we're trying to be relevant and post, big announcements on social medias, in addition to the 2 websites, make sure that you can, go to the IRG website. We'll double check that and make sure you can link to the art show as well, especially when the galleries are live. That'll be on there. I think you can also volunteer for IRG. I think they're still looking for volunteers to help out. So if you are local in Tucson and you want to kind of get the behind the scenes, I think there's some needed help there, kind of people moving and shuffling and running microphones. I will say I didn't pay for a single conference as an undergraduate. I volunteered at every single one. I got in, but, it was also a really cool way to see how conferences work. Now I'm hitting the level where I'm going to be running panels, right? I'm going to finish my thesis in 2 years, and I'm going to be a researcher that has to do all of the things that I used to run the microphones for. So it's kind of a cool way if there's undergraduates or I don't know if it's 18 and over per se, but you can check the IRG website. I think they made a full volunteer form on there. We could use the help, and also just a really cool way to get behind the scenes. You get to meet the speakers, all sorts of kind of cool. You get all the free stuff at the end if there's leftovers, right? So anyway, volunteer if you can. Of course, here for the art show, it's all volunteer run too. I think I pay them with pizza one time, but as grad students, it's part of the game here, right? It's you do a bunch of cool stuff for planetary science because you love it, so it's fine.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking the time for the interview. Before I let you go, where do people get a hold of you and learn more about your work if they wish to?
Yeah, if they want to ask about work, or I'm happy to do events and talk to kids like this over Zoom or in Tucson. I do have my website. It's a WordPress.Allison McGraw. Somehow I'm Google searchable too. I think that comes up pretty decently. If you also go to the Lunar and Planetary website, you click on graduate students and you'll see me listed in the graduate students. I've got my email on there. My website does have a contact me form, so if you want to ask talking to kids or more questions about the art show, you can go to ask me through my contact, or the art show has that the Art of Planetary Science 2021 page as well.
That was Allison M. McGraw. This has been From Here to the Stars, a video series created by the Interstellar Research Group. The IRG is a non-profit organization dedicated to thoroughly exploring the science and engineering that can eventually open up the reality of interstellar travel. Find us online at irg.space. I have been your host, Stephen Euin Cobb. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and you can subscribe to our channel for other such videos. On behalf of all of us here at the Interstellar Research Group, I thank you.